Hello, hello, hello. What's up, everybody? It's Yoshineda195 here, coming at you with another Black Ops 6 Call of Duty gaming commentary. It's been a while. Happy New Year for people who are still part of this channel, and I've missed doing this kind of commentary, and I kind of want to get back into it this year, and I thought I'd do a series on kind of different questions or different topics that I guess maybe affect my life or that I have some experience on, while kind of revisiting some great gameplays or maybe not so great gameplays from my Call of Duty time. But in today's episode, I do want to tackle this kind of question of, am I behind? And it's particularly aimed at people that are in like the 30s era, in terms of, I'd say like early 30s, somewhere similar to myself. I'm a 31-year-old, so anyone that's even like late 20s and they might be feeling like, what's happened to my 20s? Like, where has everything kind of gone in that sense? And I'm like, do you have a feeling where you like regret something and you might think, have I wasted my time? It's all those kind of wrapped up feelings in one, because I have felt myself those kind of questions like, am I wasting my life? Why does everyone else seem to have it sorted except me? Is it kind of normal to feel a little bit kind of lost in 30? Because I reckon there is this feeling that 30 is kind of like this new quarter life crisis, in the sense that people are starting to feel, and I think a lot of maybe millennials or just younger generation, they haven't got everything sorted out in life. And I guess for myself, my experience has kind of been, I guess, a feeling of being lost, but trying to kind of navigate experiences and jobs that are of interest for me, which sounds kind of vague in general. So what I mean by that is, growing up, I was always very bright in terms of being interested in science and maths, and I generally tended to love those subjects, and I was fairly good at those subjects. I was usually the top 5 of my class growing up in primary school, and then in high school, being part of like the only 6 students that would do math specialist. We only had 6 people in our year. I don't know what it is now, maybe it could be a little bit higher. And it was a class or a school that had about 120 in our year, to give you some kind of frame of reference. So you feel like, growing up and you kind of get given this pathway where naturally things are working out for you, in the sense of school's great. I loved going to school. I get to see my friends. I enjoyed learning so much, particularly, mathematics and science, physics and chemistry, and some really abstract concepts of mathematics, where it's like, wow, like this is like, not many people can do this. And it's also that traditional pathway of like, you're going to do something successful later on, be it in some sort of scientific landscape. And my background, my dad was and he still is a mechanical engineer. I was always thinking my life is going to be in engineering. This is it. But I kind of began to, it's a bit of a long story short, have these feelings that I wanted to pursue something different, something more creative, because of a teacher who kind of inspired me into film and movies, and kind of analyzing, really what the process of making a movie is, and just the joy of being creative and of writing. And it just kind of was like, wow, this kind of came out of left field. So I started doing things like that on the side, like making short films and, trying to experiment. Is this something that, I could do as well, or something that I could pursue professionally? But, it came at the cost, of the whole interest and whole pathway that I had traditionally of just going into uni, doing engineering. That's kind of what I wanted to do, and it's kind of what I did do. It was always like the quote unquote the safe route, and it's very, very cliche in the sense of like, you know, following the kind of pathway that you know is going to lead you to a job. And I guess I wonder if people out there have also experienced that, in the sense where they're like, they come to this realization, particularly maybe during uni or just as you near towards uni, where you don't know what's going to happen after you finish, because you go through this life thinking like, you know, I've got it all made, I've got it all figured out, and then you're like, shit, I'm going to be graduating next year. I've never even done the job, or I've never seen the type of work that I'm going to be doing that I've studied. And man, oh man, I don't know if it is like that for every degree, but there are certain jobs, and I think engineering is one of them, where the gap between what you learn at university and then what you do in the field is so different. And that can be like very like scary and kind of a bit of a shock, in the sense that it's not the same. Like, for instance, you know, you go to engineering, you don't have to do theoretical equations anymore. Like that's all laid out for you. In practice, the world of engineering is, you're not solving fundamental equations. You don't have to. That's already been done. It's more kind of broader strokes. You're doing reports and kind of solving problems on a bit of a, you know, back of the envelope kind of scale, still using your ability to solve problems and having some technical expertise, but it also gets very specialized, in the sense that the uni can only train you so much, and the job really, you know, that is the main training. The uni, what you learn at university kind of tells them that, like, all right, this person's smart and knows how to think and is moldable, but now like the training really begins. We're going to teach you exactly what we're going to do for this work on the job, and that comes with like graduate programs and whatnot. So there's this feeling of like disconnect between university and the real world that I think can happen, and I don't know if more and more people are feeling lost because of that. It's maybe a possible factor, but I do think that as we kind of, if you've grown up in like with a childhood that's been pretty kind to you, and an adulthood that's all, you know, a young adulthood that's also very kind to you, with the fact that you've got a good family around you and upper middle class, socioeconomic, even just basic middle class, you've got given the choice to do things, and with that burden of choice comes like this realization that now you can decide what you want to do with your life, and you're not put into the pressure situation that maybe your parents were given. So like my parents, they had no choice, so they had to do things that they were, you know, purposely like uncomfortable with, and like they had to kind of nut up and shut up just to get by, because they didn't have the choice to be like, you know what, I don't want to do this job. It's, you know, report writing, it's just not for me. Like that, my dad didn't have that, so he had to do tough hours. He had to do fly in, fly out. He had to do all these things that were just kind of uncomfortable because he didn't have to do that choice. And for that, he didn't have that fatigue of what to do. And I think for us, our generation, because obviously they do all of that, so they provide a life like that they didn't have for us. That's ultimately the whole, they always kind of tell you that as like, I did all of this so that you didn't have to go through all the crap that I did. But now with that comes this kind of realization that you're like, shit, I now have this freedom of choice that, and when I find like a job that I'm starting to find it's boring and it's a lot of grunt work and I don't want to do this stuff, well, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say no to it because I have a safety net. And I think that safety net kind of creates that sense that, shit, you know, like, well, I can't just keep quitting my job forever. and then I feel a little bit lost. Like what job is out there for me to do that's going to actually fulfill me? And that's where you get those feelings of being lost. So it could be a sense of like you feel like a failure at 30, and it is kind of like difficult because you don't want to like keep trying to find yourself. I think that's also like a cop-out where you're just like, I'm just going to keep trying to find myself. Like, what am I going to do in life? Because at some point you need to kind of test and experiment a lot, but then kind of stick with it and maybe realize or just get some sort of comfort with figuring out like, okay, well, maybe this job is just going to be terrible, or like it's just not going to be as exciting always, but that's okay. That's the job. It doesn't mean my whole life has to be like that. Because if you keep trying to find yourself, it's almost like an excuse to just never do the work. And I'm just going to stop that right here, because in this little instance of this clip, to kind of end it on a positive note, is my friend Rocco, who I told him throughout this whole clip to buy out the other person who had way more cash, but because he knows me way more than Bubba, he decides to just do the good thing as a friend and buy me out, which leads to this, just me getting completely wiped out. And I'm just completely losing my reaction in that. So as I waffle on, I think ultimately it's okay to kind of experiment and try not to settle on a job that you don't like. And it's kind of semi-normal to find yourself with these different experiences in life. But ultimately, you got to realize there's this trade-off between trying to quit all the time and trying to do things. Especially if you kind of just keep quitting willy-nilly. So I think the ultimate takeaway there is to have a balance with figuring out what you want to do in life, but also trying to realize that maybe not everything will be your cup of tea, and trying to come to terms with that. I'll do a part 2 to this because it's an interesting topic, but I hope rambling on here has given you some inspiration to dwell upon if you're feeling lost right now in your 30s. That's it for me, and I'll see you in the next one.